There is a $5 powder at any hardware store right now that dissolved in water and applied to any moss or algae-covered roof surface kills the entire biological colony down to the root system in 48 hours, prevents regrowth for 2 to 3 years, and stops the active degradation that is currently shortening your roof's life by 5 to 10 years. No roofer, no pressure washer, no ladder required for application. A roofing contractor will charge between $300 and $800 to pressure wash moss and algae from a residential roof. The pressure wash removes the visible surface layer of biological growth. It does not kill the root system, the rhizoids that moss embeds into the asphalt shingle surface and the hyphae that algae colonies anchor with. Within 60 to 90 days of a pressure wash treatment, regrowth from the surviving root system is visible on the treated surface. The contractor schedules the next cleaning visit. The moss continues eating your shingles. The billing cycle continues indefinitely. A $5 powder applied once kills the root system completely and prevents recolonization for 2 to 3 years. The contractor's pressure wash treats the symptom. The $5 powder eliminates the organism. They did not hide this because it fails. They hid this because it works. And a $5 annual treatment that kills the colony permanently cannot sustain the recurring $600 pressure wash schedule that generates predictable revenue from every moss-covered roof in a wet climate. This is the story of the oldest biocide chemistry in construction history, and the roofing industry that replaced a permanent biological solution with a recurring cosmetic treatment that leaves the organism alive. Welcome to Dr. Cole Survival. This is where we dig up what the industry buried. If these stories matter to you, hit subscribe and ring the bell right now. In the spring of 2016, a property manager named Helen Sorensen was reviewing maintenance costs for a 32-unit condominium complex in Portland, Oregon. Portland's climate, high annual rainfall, persistent cloud cover, and moderate temperatures produces ideal conditions for moss and algae growth on roofing surfaces. The complex had been contracting with a roofing company for annual roof cleaning at $1,800 per visit, covering 32 units across 4 buildings since 2009. Sorensen pulled the maintenance photographs from 7 years of cleaning records. The pattern was identical across every annual set. Pre-cleaning photographs showed heavy moss coverage on north-facing roof sections and algae black streaking on south and west exposures. Post-cleaning photographs showed clean surfaces. Photographs from the following spring, taken before the next annual cleaning, showed regrowth that was visually indistinguishable from the pre-cleaning photographs of the year before. 7 years, 14 visits, $25,200 in cleaning costs. The biological coverage at the start of year 8 was identical to the biological coverage at the start of year 1. Sorensen contacted a building materials chemist at Oregon State University who specialized in biological growth on roofing substrates. The chemist explained what the roofing company had known for 7 years. Pressure washing removes surface biomass. It does not penetrate the shingle surface to reach the rhizoids and hyphae that anchor the organisms. Those root structures survive the wash, remain embedded in the shingle surface, and produce full surface regrowth within 1 to 3 growing seasons depending on climate. A pressure wash is not a biological treatment. It is a cosmetic treatment with a predictable regrowth timeline. The chemist recommended zinc sulfate monohydrate, a mineral compound that kills moss, algae, lichen, and all rooftop biological growth at the cellular level by disrupting zinc-sensitive enzyme systems that the organisms require for metabolism, applied as a dilute solution to a wet roof surface. Zinc sulfate penetrates the surface biomass, reaches the root system, and produces complete organism death within 24 to 72 hours. The dead material weathers off the roof surface naturally over the following rain events. Reapplication once per year prevents recolonization at a material cost of $5 to $15 per treatment depending on roof size. Sorensen switched the complex to annual zinc sulfate treatment applied by the maintenance staff with a garden sprayer. Year 1 treatment cost $180 in material across all 4 buildings. At 3-year follow-up, biological coverage on the complex roofs had declined by 91% compared to the pre-treatment baseline. No pressure washing had been performed. No contractor had visited. From $3,600 per year to $180 per year. From cosmetic treatment to biological elimination. From 7 years of unchanged coverage to 91% reduction in 3 years, the roofing contractor had never mentioned zinc sulfate. Go back to ancient Persia, to the copper mining settlements in the Zagros Mountains in approximately 800 BC. Persian copper miners working in the Zagros Range had observed for generations that vegetation did not grow in the soil immediately surrounding copper ore deposits. The ground around copper-rich outcroppings was bare, while the surrounding terrain supported normal plant growth. They attributed this to the spiritual properties of copper, a metal already associated with the goddess Anahita and with purification in Persian religious practice. What they were observing was the toxicity of copper and zinc ions to plant tissue and microbial organisms at concentrations above certain thresholds. Copper and zinc are essential micronutrients for plant growth at trace concentrations and cellular toxins at elevated concentrations because they disrupt the enzyme systems that regulate cellular metabolism. The bare ground around copper deposits was not spiritually protected. It was chemically toxic to plant life at the cellular level. Persian agricultural engineers applied this observation deliberately by the 5th century BC. Copper sulfate and zinc compounds were applied to granary walls and storage structures to prevent moss, lichen, and microbial growth on the surfaces of mud brick and stone buildings that stored grain through wet winters. The Behistun inscription, the 6th century BC trilingual monument of Darius the Great, includes administrative records of copper compound distribution to provincial granary facilities for surface treatment purposes. This is biocide chemistry applied to architectural surfaces in 500 BC. The same copper and zinc ion toxicity mechanism that Persian administrators were managing in their granary network is the mechanism that zinc sulfate exploits to kill the moss on your roof today. The chemistry has not changed in 2,500 years. The roofing industry's preference for pressure washing over biocide treatment has nothing to do with chemistry and everything to do with recurring revenue. Medieval European cathedral builders, working in the wet climates of northern France, England, and the Low Countries developed protocols for treating biological growth on limestone and sandstone exterior surfaces by the 12th century. Lime wash, the same calcium hydroxide compound that the Dr. Nick channel had documented for roof reflectivity, was applied to exterior stone surfaces as a biocide treatment as well as a reflective coating. The high alkalinity of lime wash, pH above 12, creates a surface chemistry hostile to the acid-tolerant fungi moss, an algae that colonize wet stone and masonry surfaces in northern European climates. Durham Cathedral's maintenance accounts from 1189 AD document lime wash application to the north transept exterior walls, specifically the north-facing surfaces that received minimal direct sunlight and showed heaviest biological growth, as a recurring treatment to control the green and black biological staining that accumulated between major stone cleaning campaigns. The cathedral's maintenance masons understood that the biological growth was chemically degrading the stone surface and that lime wash treatment arrested the degradation between cleanings. 800 years before the first roofing contractor offered a pressure wash service, cathedral maintenance workers were applying biocide chemistry to architectural surfaces to arrest biological degradation. The pressure wash came later. The chemical kill came first. Here is the mechanism in detail and why the biological organisms growing on your roof are doing structural damage that the contractor's pressure wash leaves in progress. Moss and algae are not cosmetic problems. They are active structural degradation processes that operate continuously as long as the organisms are alive on the shingle surface. Moss, the thick green cushion forming growth common on north-facing roof surfaces in wet climates, attaches to the shingle surface through rhizoids, which are root-like structures that embed into the asphalt granule layer and the asphalt binder beneath it. As the moss colony grows and its rhizoids deepen, they physically displace granules from the shingle surface and penetrate into the asphalt matrix. A mature moss colony on an asphalt shingle can displace 15 to 30% of the granules in its footprint and create microfractures in the asphalt surface through rhizoid penetration and freeze-thaw cycling of water retained in the moss body. Algae, the black streaking growth formerly known as Gliocapsa magma that appears on south and west roof exposures in humid climates, produces a dark protective pigment sheath as a UV defense mechanism. This dark pigment absorbs solar radiation rather than reflecting it, the same mechanism that makes a dark asphalt roof hotter than a light-colored one. An algae-covered roof surface absorbs 15 to 25% more solar radiation than an algae-free surface, increasing attic temperatures by 8 to 15 degrees and accelerating the asphalt oil oxidation process documented in Permissa 9. A 2008 study published in the journal Roofing Technology tested the structural impact of moss and algae colonization on asphalt shingle samples over an 18-month controlled growth period. Moss-colonized shingles showed granule loss rates 340% higher than control shingles over the test period. Algae-colonized shingles showed asphalt oil depletion rates 28% higher than control shingles, consistent with the increased solar absorption from the dark pigment layer. Both colonization types showed accelerated surface cracking and alligatoring compared to controls. The study authors projected service life impact based on the observed degradation rates. Unchecked moss colonization reduced projected shingle service life by 4 to 7 years. Unchecked algae colonization reduced projected service life by 3 to 5 years. Combined colonization, both organisms present simultaneously, which is the typical condition on older roofs in wet climates. Projected service life reduction of 6 to 10 years from a 25-year rated shingle. 6 to 10 years of service life destroyed by biological growth that a $5 powder prevents annually. A second study from the University of Florida's Building Sciences program published in 2011 measured regrowth rates following 3 common treatment methods on matched algae colonized roof sections. Pressure washing alone, zinc sulfate treatment alone, and combined pressure washing plus zinc sulfate treatment. Pressure washing alone showed 80% visual regrowth within 90 days. Zinc sulfate treatment alone showed 12% visual regrowth at 180 days, the remaining growth representing new colonization from airborne spores rather than regrowth from surviving organisms. Combined treatment showed 8% new colonization at 180 days, essentially equivalent to zinc sulfate alone, confirming that the pressure wash contributed nothing to the biological outcome and served only cosmetic function. Pressure wash, 80% regrowth in 90 days. Zinc sulfate, 12% new colonization in 180 days. That comparison is the data the $600 pressure wash industry does not publish. The U.S. roof cleaning market generates approximately $3.8 billion annually. Moss and algae removal accounts for the majority of residential roof cleaning revenue, concentrated in the Pacific Northwest New England, Mid-Atlantic, and Gulf Coast regions where climate conditions favor biological growth. The average residential roof cleaning visit costs $250 to $800 depending on roof size and access. In regions with persistent moss growth, annual or biannual cleaning is the standard contractor recommendation. At $500 per annual cleaning, a homeowner in Portland, Oregon spends $10,000 over 20 years on pressure wash treatments that do not kill the moss. At $15 per annual zinc sulfate treatment, the same homeowner spends $300 over 20 years with 91% better biological coverage outcomes than the pressure wash protocol. The $3.8 billion roof cleaning industry is built on a treatment that fails on a documented 90-day schedule. The replacement, zinc sulfate treatment at $15 per year, is documented in peer-reviewed literature recommended by roofing materials manufacturers in their warranty maintenance guidelines and available at every hardware store. It is systematically absent from every contractor cleaning recommendation because a $15 annual treatment cannot generate $500 per visit recurring revenue. There is one additional product that the industry suppresses alongside zinc sulfate, and it requires zero application effort whatsoever. Zinc strip flashing. A 2 to 4 inch wide strip of galvanized zinc sheet metal installed along the ridge of the roof immediately below the ridge cap shingles. Each rain event washes a dilute solution of zinc ions down the roof surface from the strip. The zinc concentration in that wash is sufficient to prevent moss and algae colonization on any roof surface within 15 to 20 feet below the strip, which covers the majority of the roof area on any standard residential pitch. Cost: $15 to $25 per 50-foot roll of zinc strip at any roofing supply or hardware store. Installation requires stapling or nailing the strip along the ridge course. A 30-minute task from a ladder position. Service life: 15 to 20 years as the zinc slowly weathers. No mixing, no spraying, no annual application. Passive continuous protection from the chemistry of zinc ion toxicity that Persian farmers observed at copper ore outcroppings 2,800 years ago. Here is exactly what you do. Every detail matters, so pay close attention. Purchase 2 products. First, zinc sulfate monohydrate, sold as Moss Out, Lily Miller Moss Out, or generic zinc sulfate at any garden center or hardware store. Cost: $8 to $15 per pound, sufficient for one full treatment of an average residential roof. Confirm the label lists zinc sulfate monohydrate as the active ingredient at a minimum of 99% purity. Do not substitute copper sulfate. Copper sulfate is effective but stains concrete, masonry, and metal surfaces blue-green and can damage ornamental plants at the roof drip line. Zinc sulfate is colorless, does not stain, and is safer for surrounding vegetation at application concentrations. Second, zinc strip flashing 50-foot roll of 2.5-inch wide galvanized zinc coil stock. Cost: $15 to $25. For the zinc sulfate treatment, mix 3 ounces of zinc sulfate monohydrate per gallon of warm water, approximately 4 tablespoons per gallon. The solution will be clear and colorless. Add 1 teaspoon of liquid dish soap per gallon as a surfactant to improve adhesion to the waxy surface of algae colonies. Mix thoroughly. Apply to the roof surface using a garden pump sprayer with an extension wand that reaches the roof surface from ground level or from a ladder at the eave. You do not need to access the roof deck. Apply in the early morning on a day with no rain forecast for 24 hours. Morning application allows the solution to wet the surface and begin penetrating before midday heat increases evaporation rate. Apply to visibly wet or morning dew-covered surfaces for best penetration into moss and algae colonies. Apply generously enough to wet the full surface of every moss and algae colony visible from your application position. Do not rinse. Allow the solution to remain on the surface and dry naturally. The zinc sulfate will penetrate the biomass and reach the root system over the following 24 to 48 hours. Within 3 to 7 days, the treated moss will turn brown and begin to die back. The dead material weathers off the surface naturally over subsequent rain events. You do not need to scrub or wash it off. This natural weathering process takes 4 to 8 weeks to fully clear a heavy moss colony. This is normal and expected. Do not pressure wash after zinc sulfate treatment. The dead moss material that remains on the surface during the weathering period is inert. It is not growing, not producing spores, and not damaging the shingle. Pressure washing during this period removes the dead material faster cosmetically, but also removes granules from the underlying shingle surface at the same time. The natural weathering process is safer for shingle integrity. For zinc strip installation, position the strip immediately below the ridge cap, shingles along the full ridge length. The strip should be visible below the ridge cap but not exposed above it. Secure with roofing nails or a roofing staple gun at 12-inch intervals along the upper edge of the strip. The lower edge hangs free to allow the zinc wash to flow down the roof surface during rain events. Seal the nail heads with roofing cement to prevent water entry at the fastener locations. A homeowner in Seattle Washington documented the combined zinc sulfate plus zinc strip protocol on a 2,100 square foot craftsman home in 2020. The north and west roof sections had shown heavy moss coverage for 6 consecutive years of ownership. 2 roofing companies had performed pressure wash treatments in 2015 and 2018 at $480 and $520 respectively. Both treatments had produced regrowth to original coverage levels within 2 growing seasons. After applying zinc sulfate treatment to all affected surfaces and installing zinc strip along the 54-foot ridge in March 2020, she documented the following. Moss coverage reduced by 78% within 60 days. At 12-month follow-up, moss coverage was 94% reduced from pre-treatment baseline. At 24-month follow-up, 97% reduction maintained with no additional treatment beyond the installed zinc strip providing passive protection. Total material cost, $68, against $1,000 in previous pressure wash treatments that have produced 0 sustained improvement. I need to be completely honest about the real limitation here. Zinc sulfate treatment kills existing biological colonies and prevents recolonization for 2 to 3 years before reapplication. Zinc strip provides continuous passive protection in the area of the roof within 15 to 20 feet below the ridge. For very large roof areas, steeply pitched roofs or roofs with complex geometry that limits zinc wash coverage, supplementary treatment of lower roof sections with annual zinc sulfate application maintains protection across the full surface. Additionally, zinc sulfate and zinc strip do not address the underlying conditions that make a roof surface hospitable to biological growth. Primarily inadequate ventilation creating moisture retention on the shingle surface, and shade from overhanging trees that prevents UV exposure from inhibiting biological colonization. Trimming overhanging branches to allow sun exposure on previously shaded roof sections is the most cost-effective supplementary measure available and costs nothing beyond the time to perform it. The complete protocol is zinc strip installation plus annual zinc sulfate spot treatment for areas outside the passive protection zone, combined with tree trimming to reduce shade. Total annual cost, $15 in zinc sulfate plus 1 afternoon with a pruning saw. The pressure wash industry charges $500 per year to not do any of these things. Persian agricultural engineers were applying zinc and copper compounds to granary walls to prevent biological growth in 500 BC. Durham Cathedral's maintenance masons were applying lime wash biocide to north-facing exterior walls in 1189 AD to arrest the biological degradation that accumulated between major cleaning campaigns. Helen Sorensen reduced $3,600 in annual pressure wash costs to $180 in zinc sulfate material across 32 condominium units in Portland in 2016, with 91% better biological coverage outcomes at 3-year follow-up than the pressure wash protocol had achieved in 7 years of annual service. The $3.8 billion roof cleaning industry needs your moss to survive the treatment it sells. A pressure wash that produces 80% regrowth in 90 days is not a failure, it is the business model. A zinc sulfate treatment that produces 12% new colonization in 180 days is not a product the industry develops, recommends, or mentions. The zinc strip that provides passive continuous protection from ridge to eave is not something a contractor installs because it eliminates the service call it would have prevented. The powder is at the hardware store. It costs $5. Persian engineers were using zinc ion toxicity to keep biological growth off their buildings 2,500 years before the first roofing contractor loaded a pressure washer into a truck. You just remembered all of it. If this vault opened something for you today, subscribe and share this with every homeowner you know who has ever paid for a roof cleaning that needed to be repeated the following year. Every share puts a $5 solution in the hands of someone the $3.8 billion roof cleaning industry was counting on staying uninformed. Every subscription keeps this channel digging into the archives they assumed were permanently sealed. The next vault opens soon, and what is buried inside goes even deeper.